Mark lived in a small, quiet town surrounded by rolling green hills and endless fields of golden crops. It was the kind of place where everybody knew each other's name, and life moved at a slow, predictable pace. Mark wasn't famous or rich. He was just an ordinary mechanic who spent most of his days fixing broken cars, tractors, and anything else people brought to his workshop. His hands were always stained with grease, and his clothes smelled faintly of oil, but he didn't mind. He loved what he did because it gave him a sense of purpose. Every time he fixed something, he felt like he had made someone's day a little better. But one morning, something unusual happened that would change Mark's life forever. As he opened his workshop door, he noticed a plain white envelope lying on the ground outside. Curious, he picked it up and turned it over. There was no stamp, no address, just his name written neatly in blue ink. To Mark, from Sarah. Puzzled, Mark tore open the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. On it was a handwritten letter, filled with words so heartfelt they made his chest tighten. "Dear Mr. Mark," the letter began. "My name is Sarah and I am 10 years old. I've heard about how you fix things for people and I was wondering if maybe you could help me too. You see, I've been paralyzed since I was 5 because of a disease called spinal muscular atrophy. I can't walk, run, or even stand, but there's one thing I've always dreamed of doing. I want to fly. Just once, I want to feel the wind rushing past my face and see the world from above, like a bird. Please, Mr. Mark, will you help me?" The letter ended with a shaky signature and a tiny drawing of a plane in the corner. Mark stared at the page for a long time, his heart swelling with emotion. He couldn't believe this little girl had reached out to him, trusting him to make her impossible dream come true. At first, he thought about saying no. After all, building a plane, even a small one, wasn't exactly within his skill set. But then he remembered the look of disappointment on his own son's face when he used to promise things he never delivered. That memory stung, and he decided right then and there that he wouldn't let Sarah down. The next day, Mark started gathering materials for the project. He rummaged through junkyards, collecting scraps of metal, old propellers, and parts from abandoned vehicles. Back at his workshop, he spread everything out on the floor, staring at the mess and wondering where to begin. He had no blueprint, no guidebook, and certainly no experience building airplanes. But he did have determination, and plenty of it. For months, Mark worked tirelessly, often staying up late into the night. He welded pieces together, adjusted gears, and tested engines until his ears rang from the noise. Neighbors passing by would stop to peek through the workshop window, shaking their heads in disbelief. "What on earth is he doing?" they whispered to one another. Some laughed, thinking it was ridiculous for a mechanic to try building a plane. Others admired his persistence, even if they doubted he'd succeed. Despite the skepticism, Mark kept going. He read books about aerodynamics, watched videos online, and even called retired pilots for advice. Slowly but surely, the shape of a miniature plane began to emerge from the chaos. It wasn't perfect. It looked more like a patchwork quilt than a sleek aircraft, but it was sturdy and functional. Each bolt and screw carried a piece of Mark's soul, a testament to his unwavering commitment to Sarah's dream. As the final touches were added, Mark found himself growing nervous. What if it didn't work? What if something went wrong during the flight? These thoughts haunted him, but he pushed them aside. He owed it to Sarah to give it his best shot. Finally, the big day arrived. Mark woke up before sunrise, his stomach churning with anticipation. He double-checked every detail of the plane, tightening screws and inspecting wires. By the time the sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange, everything was ready. All that was left was to bring Sarah to the makeshift runway behind the workshop. When she arrived in her wheelchair, accompanied by her mother, Mark could barely speak. She was smaller than he had imagined, with curly brown hair and bright, curious eyes. Despite her frail body, there was a spark of excitement in her expression that made Mark's heart ache. This was her moment, and he wanted it to be perfect. "Are you ready?" Mark asked gently, kneeling beside her. Sarah nodded eagerly, gripping the armrests of her wheelchair. Her mother wiped away tears as Mark carefully lifted her into the cockpit of the tiny plane. He strapped her in securely, making sure she was comfortable. Then, with trembling hands, he started the engine. The yaw sound echoed across the empty fields, loud and powerful. As the plane began to move forward, picking up speed, Mark held his breath. For a brief moment he feared it wouldn't lift off. But then, miraculously, the wheels left the ground and the plane soared into the air. Sarah's laughter rang out, clear and joyful, as she waved wildly at Mark below. Watching her face light up with pure happiness, Mark felt tears streaming down his cheeks. For those few minutes, Sarah wasn't confined to her wheelchair. She was free, flying higher than anyone ever thought possible. And though Mark had built the plane for her in that moment, it felt like she had given him wings too. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of an adventure far greater than either of them could have imagined. As the tiny plane soared gracefully above the fields, Sarah's laughter echoed through the crisp morning air. Below, Mark stood with his hands clasped tightly together, his heart pounding in his chest. He watched every movement of the aircraft, his eyes scanning for any sign of trouble. The wind whipped around him, carrying the scent of fresh grass and wildflowers, but Mark barely noticed. All he could focus on was the fragile machine carrying the weight of a little girl's dream, and his own hopes as well. For those few minutes, time seemed to stand still. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting golden rays over the landscape. Birds chirped cheerfully in the distance, and the world felt peaceful, almost magical. Sarah waved enthusiastically from the cockpit, her curly hair fluttering in the breeze. Her smile was so bright it could have lit up the darkest night. Mark couldn't help but grin back, though his nerves were still taut like guitar strings. When the plane finally touched down gently on the makeshift runway, Mark let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He rushed forward, his boots kicking up clouds of dust as he reached the cockpit. With careful hands, he unbuckled Sarah and lifted her back into her wheelchair. Her face glowed with excitement, and she couldn't stop talking about how amazing the flight had been. "That was incredible," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with joy. "I've never felt anything like it before. Thank you, Mr. Mark. You made my dream come true." Her words filled Mark with warmth, but they also brought a lump to his throat. He ruffled her hair affectionately and smiled. "You're welcome, kiddo," he said softly. "But don't thank me yet. We'll have to do this again sometime." Sarah giggled, her eyes sparkling. "Promise?" "Promise," Mark replied firmly. Just as he was about to wheel her back toward the workshop, something strange caught his attention. In the distance, beyond the hills and farmland, the horizon began to shimmer faintly, like heat waves rising, off asphalt on a summer day. At first, Mark thought it might be his imagination playing tricks on him after such an emotional morning. But then, the shimmer grew brighter, accompanied by a low hum that vibrated through the ground beneath their feet. "What's that sound?" Sarah asked, tilting her head curiously. Mark frowned, shielding his eyes as he squinted toward the horizon. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "Let's just stay here for now." The hum grew louder, almost deafening, and the once clear sky began to darken slightly. Suddenly, massive shapes appeared, emerging slowly from the clouds. They weren't birds or airplanes. They were enormous structures, sleek and metallic, hovering silently in the air. Their surfaces gleamed ominously in the sunlight, reflecting flashes of silver and gold. Mark froze, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. These things looked nothing like anything he'd ever encountered. They were too large, too alien, too perfect. His instincts screamed at him to run, to grab Sarah and get as far away as possible. But his legs refused to move. He stood rooted to the spot, unable to tear his gaze away. "What are they? What are?" Sarah whispered, gripping the arms of her wheelchair tightly. "I don't know," Mark replied hoarsely. His voice sounded distant, even to himself. One of the ships descended closer, its movements smooth and deliberate. It stopped directly above them, casting a shadow over the field. For a moment, everything was eerily quiet. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot down from the ship, illuminating the area around them. Mark instinctively stepped in front of Sarah, shielding her with his body. "It's okay," he murmured, though his own heart was racing. "We're going to be fine." From the belly of the ship, a hatch opened, and figures began descending, a group of tall, slender beings with translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Their eyes glowed softly like lanterns in the dark, and their movements were graceful yet cautious. They didn't speak, but their presence radiated an aura of curiosity rather than hostility. Mark swallowed hard, trying to steady his breathing. Who are you?" he managed to ask, his voice shaking. The beings didn't respond immediately. Instead, one of them raised a hand and pointed toward the mini-plane parked nearby. Its gesture was unmistakable. It wanted to see the aircraft. Confused but desperate to avoid conflict, Mark nodded slowly. "Okay," he said, stepping aside to allow them access. "Go ahead." The aliens moved toward the plane, studying it intently. They ran their glowing fingers along its surface, inspecting every detail. One of them crouched down to examine the engine, while another traced the propeller with delicate precision. Mark watched nervously, unsure whether to feel relieved or terrified. After several tense minutes, one of the beings turned back to Mark and held up a small device. It emitted a series of clicks and whirs before producing a robotic voice in broken English. This impressive creativity, humanity. Mark blinked, stunned. "You understand us?" The being nodded slightly. "Limited communication," the device continued. "We observe. Long time." "You've been watching us?" Mark asked, his mind reeling. "Yes." Impressed, but cautious. Sarah, who had been silent until now, spoke up timidly. "Why are you scared of us?" The alien hesitated, as if considering its response. Finally, it gestured toward the planet below. "Your kind, destructive. Wars, pollution, fearful actions. Yet, acts of kindness exist. Like this." It pointed to the plane again. Mark exchanged a glance with Sarah, both of them equally bewildered. "So, you came because of this?" he asked, gesturing to the aircraft. "Symbol," the alien replied cryptically. "Hope." Before Mark could ask more questions, the beings began retreating toward their ship. Within moments, the hatch closed, and the vessel ascended back into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. The humming faded, leaving behind an eerie silence. For a long while, neither Mark nor Sarah spoke. They simply stared at the empty sky, trying to make sense of what had just happened. "They came because of you," Mark said finally, turning to Sarah with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "Because of your dream." Sarah looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think they'll come back?" Mark shook his head slowly. "I don't know. But whatever happens next, we'll figure it out together." And deep down, despite the strangeness of the encounter, Mark felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't as alone, or as doomed as it seemed. The silence that followed the alien's departure was deafening. Mark and Sarah sat in stunned disbelief, the enormity of what had just happened sinking in slowly. The field around them felt eerily empty now, as if the very air had been drained of energy. The morning sun still hung high in the sky, but its warmth seemed distant, like it couldn't quite reach them anymore. Mark crouched beside Sarah's wheelchair, his mind racing. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Sarah nodded, though her wide eyes betrayed her lingering shock. "I think so," she whispered. "But what were they?" "I don't know," Mark admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "Aliens, I guess. Real ones, not like in movies." The word aliens hung heavy between them, almost too strange to comprehend. Mark glanced at the mini-plane parked nearby, now glowing faintly under the sunlight. The alien's fascination with it gnawed at him. Why had they singled out this tiny aircraft? Was it because of how rudimentary it was compared to their advanced technology? Or was there something deeper, something symbolic, that resonated with them. Before he could dwell further on these questions, a low rumble echoed across the horizon. It wasn't the gentle hum from earlier. This sound was sharper, more urgent. Mark whipped his head around just in time to see another ship descending from the sky, but this one was different. Larger, darker, and bristling with weapons, it loomed over the landscape like a storm cloud ready to unleash chaos. "Oh no," Mark muttered under his breath, instinctively stepping in front of Sarah again. This new ship didn't hover gracefully, like the first one. Instead, it landed with a thunderous crash, sending tremors through the ground. Dust swirled violently as its massive form settled into place. Then, without warning, a hatch opened, and figures emerged, not the tall, shimmering beings from before, but shorter, stockier creatures clad in metallic armor. Their faces were obscured by helmets, and their movements were mechanical, devoid of any grace or curiosity. Mark's stomach churned. These weren't explorers or observers. They were soldiers. One of the armored figures raised a device similar to the one used by the previous aliens. A harsh robotic voice blared out in broken English. "Humans, cease operations. Surrender craft." "What?" Mark stammered, taking a step back. "What are you talking about? This plane isn't even ours, it belongs to her." He gestured towards Sarah, who clutched the arms of her wheelchair tightly, her knuckles white. The soldier ignored him, marching forward with deliberate steps. Behind it, others fanned out, surrounding the plane. They inspected it with cold efficiency, their actions devoid of the awe or admiration shown by the earlier visitors. "Hey," Mark shouted, stepping closer despite his fear. "Leave it alone, that's not yours." The lead soldier turned sharply, raising a weapon-like object in Mark's direction. "Do not interfere," it warned, its tone icy. Mark froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. He glanced at Sarah, whose face was pale with terror. "It's okay," he whispered, though he wasn't sure whom he was trying to reassure more, her or himself. As the armored figures continued examining the plane, another figure appeared from the ship, a taller, more imposing being dressed in flowing robes that shimmered faintly, reminiscent of the first aliens. Unlike its companions, this one radiated authority, its presence commanding instant attention. "You misunderstand," the robed figure said, its voice smoother and less robotic than the soldiers. "We mean no harm, but your creation poses risks we cannot ignore." "Risks?" Mark repeated, incredulous. "It's just a little plane. How could it possibly hurt anyone?" The alien hesitated, as if choosing its words carefully. "Your species is unpredictable. Your inventions often lead to destruction even when created with good intentions. This machine represents innovation born of compassion. Such acts inspire hope, but also fear. Others may seek to exploit it." Mark frowned, trying to process what the alien was saying. "So you're here to protect us? From ourselves?" "In part," the alien replied cryptically, "but also from those who would misuse your creations. We have observed your world for centuries. Humanity possesses great potential for both creation and devastation. Today we witnessed an act of kindness, but tomorrow someone else might twist such ingenuity into a tool of war." Sarah spoke up suddenly, her voice trembling but determined. "But why come now? Why because of me?" The alien turned its glowing gaze toward her, studying her intently. "Because dreams hold power. Yours reminded us that humanity is capable of beauty amidst struggle, yet dreams can also awaken danger. By building this craft, you have drawn attention, not only from us but from others who do not share our values." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. "Others?" The alien nodded gravely. "There are factions among the stars who view Earth as a threat or an opportunity. Your actions today may have signaled your readiness to explore beyond your planet. Some will welcome you, others—" It trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The weight of the alien's words pressed down on Mark and Sarah, forcing them to confront a reality far larger than themselves. Finally, Mark straightened, squaring his shoulders. Look, I don't care about politics or whatever you're dealing with out there. All I wanted was to help this little girl achieve her dream. If that makes trouble for you, or anyone else, then fine. But I'm not giving up on her. His surprise, the alien inclined its head slightly as if impressed. Courage, it said simply. A rare trait. Perhaps humanity deserves another chance. With that, the alien gestured to its soldiers, who began retreating toward the ship. As quickly as they had arrived, they disappeared inside, and the vessel ascended into the sky, vanishing within seconds. Mark let out a shaky breath, collapsing onto the grass beside Sarah. Well, he said weakly, running a hand through his hair. That was something. Sarah managed a small laugh, though tears glistened in her eyes. Do you think they'll really come back? I don't know, Mark admitted. But if they do, we'll face them together, just like today. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the field, Mark realized that their lives had changed forever. What started as a simple act of kindness had opened a door to mysteries far beyond Earth, and challenges they couldn't yet imagine. But for now, all he could do was sit beside Sarah, watching the horizon and wondering what tomorrow might bring. Word of the alien encounter spread like wildfire. By the time Mark and Sarah returned to town, a crowd had already gathered near the workshop, their faces etched with equal parts curiosity and fear. News traveled fast in small towns. But this wasn't just local gossip. It was the kind of story that made headlines around the world. Phones buzzed incessantly as people called friends, family, and reporters, desperate to share what they'd seen, or thought they'd seen. At first, no one believed them. Aliens, really? Scoffed an elderly farmer leaning against his truck. Mark's always been a bit odd, tinkering with machines all day. Probably rigged some fancy lights or something. But skepticism quickly gave way to awe when footage surfaced. A teenager who happened to be flying a drone nearby had captured the entire event. The glowing ships descending from the sky, the shimmering aliens inspecting the plane, and even the ominous arrival of the armored soldiers. The video went viral within hours, drawing millions of views online and sparking debates across social media. Was it real? A hoax? Or proof that humanity wasn't alone in the universe? Government officials arrived the next morning, their black SUVs kicking up dust as they pulled into the workshop driveway. Men and women in suits poured out, carrying clipboards and cameras, their expressions unreadable. They introduced themselves as representatives of a secret task force dedicated to studying extraterrestrial phenomena. Mark didn't know whether to feel honored or terrified. Mr. Peterson, said one of the agents, flipping open a notebook. Can you describe exactly what happened here yesterday? Mark hesitated, glancing at Sarah, who sat quietly in her wheelchair beside him. Her parents hovered protectively nearby, unsure how much to reveal about their daughter's role in the events. Taking a deep breath, Mark recounted everything. From the initial appearance of the peaceful aliens to the arrival of the more aggressive faction, he left out nothing, knowing that hiding details would only make things worse. The agents listened, intently jotting down notes and occasionally exchanging glances. When he finished, one of them gestured toward the mini-plane still parked in the field. May we examine it? Mark nodded reluctantly. Go ahead, just don't break it. As the team swarmed around the aircraft, another group began setting up equipment near the workshop. They brought in scanners, sensors, and devices Mark couldn't identify, claiming they needed to analyze any residual energy left behind by the visitors. Meanwhile, scientists joined the fray, eager to study the metallic tablets the aliens had left embedded in the ground before departing. These tablets contained intricate diagrams and symbols unlike anything anyone had ever seen, hinting at advanced technologies beyond human comprehension. While chaos unfolded outside, Mark retreated inside the workshop with Sarah. He closed the door behind them, muffling the noise of the growing crowd. For a moment, they simply sat in silence, letting the calm of the familiar space wash over them. What happens now? Sarah asked softly, breaking the quiet. I don't know, Mark admitted, sinking onto a stool. But whatever it is, we'll get through it together. Over the next few days, life became surreal. Reporters camped outside the workshop, shoving microphones and cameras in Mark's face whenever he stepped outside. Scientists bombarded him with questions about the plane's design, while conspiracy theorists accused him of staging the whole thing for attention. Some praised him as a hero. Others dismissed him as a crackpot. Through it all, Mark stayed grounded, focusing on the one person who mattered most, Sarah. Then came the breakthrough. Late one night, after everyone else had gone home, Mark stayed up tinkering with the metallic tablet the aliens had left behind. It was smooth and cool to the touch, its surface covered in glowing patterns that shifted subtly when touched. Frustrated but determined, he pressed random areas until suddenly, a holographic projection sprang to life above the tablet. It showed blueprints for engines powered by clean energy, medical devices capable of healing injuries instantly, and systems designed to purify polluted air and water. Each diagram was accompanied by instructions written in a language neither Mark nor anyone else could understand. Yet somehow, the designs felt intuitive, as if the knowledge was meant to be shared. This could change everything, Mark whispered, his voice trembling with excitement. He called Sarah and her parents back to the workshop, showing them the projections. Together, they marveled at the possibilities. Clean energy could solve the global climate crisis. Advanced medicine could save millions of lives. Pollution-free cities could give future generations a chance at a better world. But there was a catch. When government officials learned about the blueprints, they immediately classified them as top secret, forbidding anyone except authorized personnel from accessing the information. For security reasons, they explained vaguely. Mark bristled at the restriction. These aren't just secrets. They're gifts. The aliens trusted us with this knowledge. We can't keep it locked away. They didn't trust us, countered one of the agents coldly. They trusted you, and now it's our job to decide how best to use it. Furious but powerless, Mark watched as the tablets were loaded into armored trucks and driven away. That night he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with guilt and frustration. Had he failed the aliens and humanity by letting the authorities take control? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the workshop door. Groaning, he got up and opened it, expecting yet another journalist or curious neighbor. Instead, he found himself face to face with one of the shimmering aliens. Startled, Mark stumbled backward. How did you get here?" "We are always watching," the alien replied, its voice calm and serene. "We knew the leaders of your world would seek to hoard our gifts. This cannot be allowed." Before Mark could respond, the alien handed him a small device, a sleek, palm-sized object that pulsed faintly with light. "This contains copies of the knowledge. Share it wisely. Trust those who value creation over destruction." With that, the alien vanished into thin air, leaving Mark clutching the device in stunned silence. The next morning, Mark gathered a small group of trusted individuals, scientists, engineers, activists, and dreamers, who shared his vision of using the alien technology for good. Working secretly in the workshop, they began decoding the blueprints, piecing together prototypes that could revolutionize the planet. Sarah played a crucial role too, offering insights and encouragement despite her physical limitations. "You showed me I could fly," she told Mark during one late-night brainstorming session. "Now let's show the world it can soar." As weeks turned into months, their efforts gained momentum. News of the alien-inspired innovations leaked to the public, sparking protests demanding transparency and accountability from governments. People rallied behind Mark and his team, inspired by their determination to put humanity's collective well-being above greed and power. Through it all, Mark never forgot why he started this journey: to fulfill a little girl's dream. Now, standing on the brink of a new era, he realized that Sarah's dream had ignited something far greater than either of them could have imagined. Humanity wasn't just reaching for the stars, it was learning to build bridges toward a brighter future. And somewhere, perhaps light years away, the aliens watched silently, hoping their gamble on humanity would pay off. The ripple effects of the alien encounter stretched far beyond Mark's small town, reaching every corner of the globe. What began as a humble mechanic's attempt to fulfill a little girl's dream had evolved into a movement that united people, across borders, cultures, and languages. The blueprints left behind by the aliens became more than just technological marvels. They symbolized hope, collaboration, and humanity's potential to rise above its flaws. Mark and his team worked tirelessly, in the workshop, turning the alien designs into tangible solutions for Earth's most pressing problems. Their first breakthrough came in the form of a compact energy generator powered by ambient heat and light. Unlike traditional power sources, it produced no pollution and required minimal maintenance. When they unveiled it during a live broadcast, millions watched in awe as the device illuminated an entire village using nothing but sunlight and body heat. "This changes everything," one scientist exclaimed, tears streaming down her face. "No more fossil fuels, no more blackouts, clean energy for everyone." The success of the generator sparked a wave of innovation. Engineers adapted the alien technology to create water purification systems capable of transforming saltwater or contaminated rivers into drinkable water within seconds. Medical researchers developed portable healing devices that accelerated tissue repair, saving countless lives in remote areas where hospitals were scarce. Farmers embraced sustainable farming techniques inspired by the alien diagrams, growing crops faster and healthier while restoring depleted soil. But perhaps the most profound change was not in the technology itself, it was in the way people responded to it. For decades, humanity had been divided by greed, fear, and mistrust. Wars raged over resources, corporations exploited the vulnerable, and nations prioritized profit over progress. Yet now, faced with tools designed to uplift rather than exploit, something shifted. Communities banded together to build solar-powered schools, hospitals, and homes. Corporations redirected their focus from profit margins to environmental restoration. Governments set aside rivalries to collaborate on global projects aimed at reversing climate damage and eradicating poverty. At the heart of this transformation stood Mark and Sarah. Though neither sought fame or recognition, they became symbols of what humanity could achieve when kindness and creativity took precedence over selfishness and destruction. Mark traveled the world, sharing stories of how a simple act of compassion, a mini-plane built for a paralyzed girl, had opened doors to unimaginable possibilities. Everywhere he went, crowds gathered to hear him speak, their eyes shining with determination. Sarah, meanwhile, became an advocate for children with disabilities, urging societies to see past limitations and focus on potential. She often accompanied Mark to conferences, speaking passionately about how dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed, could inspire change. Her courage and resilience touched hearts everywhere she went. Together, they reminded people that even the smallest actions could have monumental consequences. Of course, not everyone welcomed the changes. Powerful industries resistant to losing control fought back fiercely, spreading misinformation and lobbying against the adoption of alien-inspired technologies. Some governments hesitated, fearing the loss of economic dominance or military advantage. But grassroots movements quickly countered these efforts, organizing protests, petitions, and campaigns to demand transparency and fairness. "You gave us a chance to be better," one activist told Mark during a rally in New York City. "We won't let anyone take that away." As years passed, the impact of the alien gift grew exponentially. Cities transformed into green havens powered entirely by renewable energy. Oceans began to heal as plastic waste disappeared thanks to biodegradable alternatives. Forests, once lost to deforestation, sprouted anew, nurtured by advanced reforestation techniques. Diseases that once plagued humanity vanished, replaced by affordable, accessible healthcare systems. And yet, amidst all the progress, Mark never forgot the aliens' warning that humanity's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness. He often reflected on their words. Dreams hold power, but dreams can awaken danger. It was a reminder that innovation alone wasn't enough. It had to be guided by wisdom, empathy, and responsibility. One evening, as Mark sat on the porch of his workshop watching the sunset, Sarah wheeled herself beside him. Now a teenager, she had grown into a confident young woman with a passion for science and advocacy. "Do you think they'll ever come back?" she asked, gazing at the stars twinkling faintly in the twilight. "I don't know," Mark replied, honestly. "But if they do, I hope we'll have made them proud." Sarah smiled, resting her hand on his arm. "We already have. Look at everything we've done because of them and because of you." Mark chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It wasn't just me, kiddo. It was all of us. You, your dream, the aliens, the team. Everyone played a part." For a long moment, they sat in comfortable silence, letting the cool breeze carry away their worries. Then, without warning, a familiar shimmer appeared in the sky. At first it was faint, almost imperceptible, but soon it grew brighter, resolving into the unmistakable shape of an alien ship descending gracefully toward the field behind the workshop. Mark and Sarah exchanged wide-eyed glances before rushing outside. As the ship landed, the same tall, shimmering beings emerged, their glowing eyes filled with curiosity and pride. One of them stepped forward, holding out a small object, a crystal-like orb pulsing with soft, rhythmic light. "You have exceeded expectations," the alien said, its voice resonating warmly. "This is our final gift, a map. Follow it, and you will find others like us who wish to share knowledge and forge alliances. Humanity's journey among the stars begins now." Mark accepted the orb, his hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," he whispered, overwhelmed by gratitude. The alien inclined its head slightly. "Remember, the path ahead is yours to shape. Choose wisely." With that, the beings returned to their ship, which ascended silently into the night sky until it disappeared completely. Back on the porch, Mark and Sarah stared at the orb, its glow casting a gentle light over their faces. "What do you think it means?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with excitement. "It means," Mark replied with a grin, "that we're just getting started." And so, under a canopy of stars, humanity took its first step toward a future filled with endless possibilities. Oh, future shaped not by fear or division, but by dreams, courage, and the unshakable belief that even the smallest acts of kindness could change the world.